My name is Dr. John C. Bullion, and I completed my doctorate in education and educational administration and leadership here at Baylor in 2020. I was a member of the first cohort for the reboot of that educational doctorate, the EdD program here. I just couldn't shake that idea of, wow, to get my doctorate at Baylor. I decided to wait a year, not enroll in those other programs, and start my doctorate journey here at Baylor in 2017. Basically hit the ground running, and it was a rigorous program. I'm a year and a half going on 2 years out of graduation now, but you know, it was life-changing. The contacts that I made, the mentors that I've been blessed with, my instructors, the cohort model I think here at Baylor is a really powerful model. And there is a lot, it's not just a distance learning model. It really brings practicing, practitioners really back to the collegiate environment, so that we're not just learning online, distance learning. I mean, there is a piece to that, but really there's a lot of face-to-face, and you have just opportunities to experience just a really rich Christian-based educational experience at the college level. I highly recommend it to anyone that is interested in getting their educational doctorate. In 2017, 2018, around that same time when I started my Baylor journey towards my doctorate, I also had transitioned from those roles that I had held in public education, the whole time working with individuals with disabilities, into this role at the ESC Region 12, the Education Service Center Region 12 here in Waco. And so in my role in the first year of being a special ed liaison here in Texas, I was given a lot of autonomy to create and iterate just creative ways to flow information throughout the state, to break down some of the silos that exist at the local level in our schools, but also in the regional level at ESCs, as well as with our state agency. You know, information tends to flow one-way direction from the top down. And the idea was, what if we started a conversation and we had information flowing both directions, right? From the local level back up to the state, so that they could have empathy and understand, hey, this is what you're asking us to do, but this is where the struggles are. So Pam and I, my colleague at ESC Region 11 up in the Fort Worth area, she's a special ed liaison there. She has about close to 40 years of experience in this field, and I have going on 25. We got together and said, well, why don't we, people love podcasts. More and more people like stories. What if we created a podcast, but we were very specific in what we were marketing with this podcast. There's a lot of people out there telling the story of what's not going right. You can turn on the local media, turn on the local news, and hear this crisis, and we wanted to not do that. We wanted to tell the positive story. And so we just started by reaching out to agencies such as the Texas Education Agency, our ESCs, our local education agencies around the state, families, and just started asking, do you have an example of something that is exceptional, of a story that should be shared with others, so that we can all learn from this? And from that, just kind of came SPEDTalk. And so SPEDTalk really is, our tagline is elevating the conversation. It's about finding that positive spin and looking for positive examples of individuals that are just making a difference for people with disabilities. I knew that this project, this podcast SPEDTalk, was special because every time we would interview someone, every time we would connect with someone, humanize their story, share their information, the ideas, the resources, we got such positive feedback from people, and more than that, even the people who would join us as guests on the podcast, that we would showcase their stories, always left feeling good. So when we were nominated for the Barbara Jordan Media Award, it was a really special honor, because it meant that, wow, people are noticing enough that they think that this little podcast that we do is worthy of even being recommended, to this Barbara Jordan Media Award. I mean, this is a governor's award. The governor has a committee for people with disabilities that votes, on these types of awards. And then fast forward several months later, when we got the email, I almost didn't open the email at first, and I thought, I've just got to say, and it brought me to just about tears. And I called my colleague Pam and said, "Oh my gosh, we won a Barbara Jordan Media Award. Can you believe this?" And and so it was very humbling, but it was also very exciting, because in that moment, my first reaction was, this is not about me, this is not about Pam, this is not about SPEDTalk, this is about the young man Simon that came on to our podcast that has an intellectual disability, and his teacher, Cammie Dodds. And the work that Cammie Dodds has done with him and with other students in at the time Brady ISD, where she was working, to really unleash their potential. The winning episode for the Barbara Jordan Media Award was, the title of it was, "Don't Be Afraid to Be Included." And so often in schools we hear things like, we need to include children with disabilities with their non-disabled peers. Inclusion, all this stuff. But rarely from the kid's perspective, a child with a disability, and I don't even like that word disability, I like to say that we all have differing abilities. And so, but this young man, when we asked him towards the end of the podcast, after he had us cracking up, I mean, he was such a role model, and such a leader within his own community, and now even I think a sponsor for Special Olympics and all kinds of stuff. And so he said, well, we said, what would you tell other kids who may be young, but they're in school, and maybe they have a disability, or maybe they don't learn like other kids? And he said, I would tell them, don't be afraid to be included. Put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to go out and try things. And that just was so powerful. And so that came back to, we were like, that's the title of this episode. And then that ended up being the episode that won the Barbara Jordan Media Awards. I felt like really and truly at the end of the day, Simon and his teacher, Cammie Dodds, were really the heroes of the story, because that episode would not have existed without them. I mean, so Pam and I really, I think, I always say we're the smallest part of this, and we have a team of people now, fellow liaisons that help us with that podcast, with editing and advertising and things like that. It's still just a little podcast that we do, but we love doing it, and I think that if something brings you joy, and if the purpose of it is elevating and highlighting other people's stories and what other people have to share, that it's always going to be a success.